welcome to the DFS pregame show here on RotoGrinders. I'm Jordan Cooper, aka Blender Ed, Blender HD, if you want to follow me there on Twitter. And this is the show, as you already should know. We go over a little bit about yesterday's slate. We talk a little bit about today's slate. Answer your strategy questions. DFS strategy. We got no MMA this weekend, so I don't know if we could talk about that. Anything. It doesn't matter what the sport is, right? NBA Showdown. I don't know. I'm not playing any of that. Soccer. We got soccer today, right? So if you want to talk about something, it's Casual Friday. So we'll casual it up. Any casual questions, even if it's not DFS related. If you just have anything, you want to get something off your chest, post it in the YouTube chat. You do you and click those thumbs up button. It helps us out. Hit the thumbs up button. Get mine. Well, I got water. I got water today. Keep my water cold. Hit the subscribe button if you're new here. Hit the notification bell to know when we go live. I see you guys in the YouTube chat. Suki Singh, you're always early, right? He's always like first. He's the first good morning guy. Sometimes he's there like a half an hour early, right? Good morning. Okay, good morning. And then you don't hear from Suki for the rest of the show. I just want to get the first good morning in, and then I'm good, right? Apocalypse there. Dave Spag, Doug Montgomery, real life pitcher, right? We're not gonna know who he is. He's a real life pitcher, but maybe it's Trevor Bauer. Maybe that's Trevor Bauer. Maybe it's Kurt Schilling, right? He's online. He's around. He's always around, right? He plays some DFS. Joe Mack, 58, Lee Palm, Card Fan, Sterling Woods, Michael Dompier. Superman's here. Oh, hey, got out of your phone booth. Did you changed in your phone? Clark Kent changed and came here for the show. Then Eric Hippold, who says, good morning, entered 3 contests, low stakes, small field, cash, and GPP, and placed high in all 3, 3rd and 14th, using my principles. Love theory of DFS. Thanks. Blender trained. Okay. It's not my principles, just to be clear. Nothing of what I talk about I made up, right? I may explain it differently from some people, right? But the math, I didn't make up the math, right? I'm just communicating it. I compare myself to Neil deGrasse Tyson, right? Yeah, the physicist. He didn't make up physics. He communicates it, right? So you say, oh, I saw the black hole special or whatever, and oh, now I understand it. Oh, because of all the stuff that you know. Like, yeah, I didn't make it up. Right. So it's not I always want to highlight that. These aren't my principles. They're just the principles of math and logic and probability and statistics. So all I'm doing is telling you about it. So I didn't make it. I wish I did. If I made this stuff up and I invented it, I would never tell anyone because then I'd be winning all the money. But no, this stuff actually exists and other people do it as well. Right. I'm just telling you. I'm telling you that they do. Let's see. Danny Lewis, Jordan, I want to hear about your poker career. What do you want to hear about? I don't know. Do you want to start the show that way, or do we want to look at lineups from last night? From last night, you had to dodge some weather, right? The Dodgers game never started up again. So the Dodgers almost got that. Really, they almost got there as a stack. Pollock hit a home run. Muncy had that grand slam. Chris Taylor had double-digit points. The 5-man didn't get there in DraftKings, but. For the Dodgers yesterday, the Dodgers Nationals game, I OIS'd it. I was playing primarily on FanDuel where the Dodgers were much more chalky than they were on DraftKings. So I wasn't playing that much of them, but in lineups, I was just, only in stacks, no one-offs. I build primarily 4-3-1 lineups on FanDuel. So either they were the 4, they were the 3, but none of the 1. I had some decent lineups. I mean, I didn't do that well yesterday. I mean, it was a losing day. I mean, I think my highest line was like 47th or something, right? I didn't have enough DeGrom in comparison to Burns on FanDuel, and the difference in scoring there was dramatic because you don't get dinged as much for the hits and stuff, and Burns came out. So DeGrom scored maybe 16 points higher than Burns. Obviously, DeGrom had 14 strikeouts in 93 pitches. The main concern that I had on FanDuel with DeGrom, obviously, the bat had him projected at 99 pitches. I thought that was a little aggressive. I thought they'd let him go around 90-ish, But even at 90, he was the highest projected pitcher. He was still the highest projected pitcher by several points. But on FanDuel, that quality start and the win quality start, like that the points over there, it's like, well, you have to go 6 innings. So Jacob deGrom could have easily just gone 5. I thought Burns had a better chance of the quality start. So the difference between the two pitchers on FanDuel was closer. So that's why I played. I mean, I still play 30% of my lineups for Jacob deGrom, but more were Corbin Burns. And I had some Framber Valdez on FanDuel. Less Ian Anderson on FanDuel because you don't need 2 pitchers. Ian Anderson was chalky on DraftKings, and that's why I did play a lot of Mets. Mets were my I played a couple of lineups on DraftKings, and it was the Mets. I played some Mets on FanDuel also, but you got more relative value playing the Mets on DraftKings because Anderson was 28% owned. And if you take a look, Ricky D, I don't show Ricky D that often on the pregame show because he has a very asymmetric strategy, very high variance strategy. He doesn't like even it out. He's like, I'm gonna do one thing and I'm gonna build as many lineups as I can that way. So you can see here, Ricky D had like no Ian Anderson and no Cardinals, who on DraftKings were the de facto easily the chalk, right? Because they're too cheap playing in Coors. Tyler O'Neill, Paul Goldschmidt, Arenado, DeJong, Dylan Carlson. We could see here. So like he had 0, he had like nothing. Just like he had one lineup with Paul DeJong, or one off, I guess. Shortstop, I guess it's scarce position. But you see down here, Jeff McNeil, 54%. Conforto, 38%. Alonso, right? Because we organize it just by Ricky D. I mean, he just went heavy into the Mets, right? So played a lot of deGrom, Burns, because they were cheap on DraftKings. So you can see here, Pilar, McCann, just make a ton. Half of his lineups are Mets lineups. And hope to get that, the leverage over nearly 30% owned Ian Anderson. So strategically, that is what I did. I just was playing a couple of lineups on DraftKings. Because you can also look at like Royal Payne, a little bit more asymmetric, a little bit more Reds, right? So sometimes I just look across and we like, okay, I don't know what they did, but like if we organize each one individually, you get more of a look. So you see Royal Payne, you see Castellanos, you see looked like Padres, although the Padres weren't that low owned, but still over a Machado, but still the Mets. I mean, if we take a look across the board on Conforto, he was 7% on DraftKings, but look, I pulled up all these sharper players, right? All these guys. Almost every single one had more Mets. McNeil, almost every single one over that 10%. Pete Alonso. Okay, maybe not as much over here, but still, it's 6%. So the Mets were the leverage stack on DraftKings last night. So if you made that assessment, because people ask me, it's like, well, what do I get after I'm going to review a slate? What am I going to learn? Right? What am I going to learn from looking at sharper players' lineups? Well, learn why. Learn the why, but not the why of why they thought someone was going to do well. None of these guys think anyone's going to do well. So it's projection based. There's no opinions there. It's the fact that Ian Anderson was going to be de facto SP2 chalk, and the Mets doing well gains you more first place equity than other stacks, because when the Mets do well, 30% of the lineups in the contest do badly at the same time. They're negatively correlated with one another. Okay, so you could do that strategically. You could do that every day. So last night, like if you wanted to play Pirates against Burns, I mean, you could have. If you wanted to play the Braves, hey, that looked good in the first inning. Playing Austin Riley, playing some Braves against deGrom, super duper leverage, right? Like, uh-oh, DeGrom's dead in the first inning, right? Gives up 3 earned runs and comes back and strikes out 14. It's still the highest scoring pitcher. But like that's why you do. Typically on DraftKings, you're looking at that like SP2 chalk. It doesn't apply as much on FanDuel because people don't have to roster a second pitcher. And they're typically, and the highest owned pitchers are typically the top projected pitchers on the slate that, like today we have a 14-game slate. Whoever's going to be the highest owned pitcher, do you have? Yes, you get a lot of leverage with stacking them, but you could also find low owned stacks that are better offenses. That the leverage just isn't worth it anymore, right? Like, is there a reason? Is there a reason to stack the Pirates against 50% owned Burns? I mean, you could have, but they project so low. I'd rather go after pitchers that are chalky, that are just not necessarily that good. They just happen to be slightly underpriced, right? It could have been Cueto, right? Let's say Ian Anderson was 9,500 yesterday. He wouldn't have been SP2 chalk. Maybe Cueto would have been. Maybe Merrill Kelly or something like that. One of the pitchers in that game. Like if Luis Castillo was owned, the Padres get more value. But he wasn't. Only 9% of the lineup. So maybe it's probably more beneficial to play Castillo than play the Padres. This is regardless of projections and ownership, just the concept of leverage. A lot of people are going to play Ian Anderson, who's directly negatively correlated to Ian Anderson, well, the Mets. So in a non-Ian Anderson lineup, the Mets have extra value. So what you have to do in these particular instances, the ownership of the pitcher that is facing the team boosts the ceiling of the projections. You have to almost like boost the projections of the team that they're facing. Okay? Because you're trying to win DFS contests. You're not trying to score the most points. Just randomly. The most of a certain number. So like if you were to play, for instance, let's take a picture like Will Crow, okay? Barely owned, right? 4% owned. They're facing the Brewers. Okay? If you had a choice between taking Christian Yelich or Pete Alonso, right? Same price range. I know different positions, but same price range. Or Lindor or Adames. Okay, is that a little bit better? Closer? Lindor or Adames. They were close enough in price. 4,400, 4,900. Okay? Maybe Adames projects better, slightly better than Lindor. Maybe. I think maybe he did against Crow. But if they score the same amount of points, Lindor, if let's say Adames hits a home run, let's say they both hit home runs. Let's just say they both hit home runs. Okay? In those instances, if Adames hits a home run, solo shot, 14 points. He gets 14, and Will Crow gets -2, right? Minus 2.6 or whatever it is. Okay? So you're playing Adames, your lineups go up, and 4.64% of other lineups go down. Okay? So what's the difference? What's that gap? How many places do you move when you do that? Okay? Not as many as if when Lindor hits the home run, he gets 14 points, and 28.49% of other lineups get negative 2.6 points. So now you're moving past a lot more lineups. Same home run, but in the event where Lindor hits the home run, you gain more benefit from that occurrence. Okay? Now they both end up with the same amount of points. Right. It's like, well, what does it matter? I played Lindor, he got 14. I played Adames, he got 14. Yeah, but if Adames gets 14 and Lindor gets 0, you're not passing those Ian Anderson lineups as much. If Lindor gets 14 and Adames gets 0, Lindor's points are almost worth like 17 points. You have to add point to -2.6 to like 30% of the field. So even if you did that by average, I think it's a flawed probably a flawed mathematical way of thinking about it. So let's say let's say 30% of lineups. So if you get let's say 14 points out of it, I'm just going to do the math, times 0.3, maybe it's worth an extra what? It's really worth an extra 4 points to you in general. Something like that. It's worth more. Well, it wouldn't be worth an extra 4 point. No, because 2.6. Okay, 2.6 times 0.3. It'd be worth an extra quarter of a point to you, on average. Because remember, the field is losing. The 30% of the field is losing 2.6 points. So 30% of 2.6 is 0.78. So on average, I mean, I think you can't really. I think mathematically you shouldn't be thinking of it exactly that way. But from a practicality perspective, that is what you're doing. So Lindor's points, a hit, right? A hit, more RBIs, and any points that Mets get are hurting 30% of lineups. Now let's say you stack the Pirates against Corbin Burns, and he gives up a home run. 2.6 times 0.5. So that home run, if you played Adam Frazier, whoever, who didn't someone hit a home run yesterday off of a Burns? Someone did. One of the Pirates did, I remember. If you played him, that home run is worth an extra 1.3 points on average because he's 50% owned. Austin Riley's home run is worth 1.56 on average more because 60% of the field has DeGrom. And most likely you're not playing Riley in the lineup with DeGrom, so they're not like negating each other out. But if you play the Brewers against Will Crow, like 0.04 of the, it's worth an extra 0.1. It's worth less. And then obviously you have to add that compounds on the stack. So let's say your stack, a 5-man stack against Ian Anderson. Let's say they all get home runs off of him. He gives up 5 home runs. Okay? So 5 home runs. We're going to the extreme example of the stack being the top stack of the day, right? So let's say 2.6 times 5. Ian Anderson is losing 13 points in that instance. Okay? And 3% of the field is losing it. So that stack in total may be worth 4 more points to you in the contest, 3.9 in the contest, than other stacks. Versus the Pirates, versus the Brewers against Will Crow, who's barely owned. Now, if the Brewers stack is 12 points better projected than the Mets, the Brewers are probably still a better stack because obviously, yes, great. The Mets stack is you get an extra 4 points from on average, but it still doesn't make up the gap. It makes them a better stack than maybe other stacks down there. But it wouldn't make them better than the Cardinals just in projection. Now, this is regardless of ownership, because obviously the Cardinals on DraftKings are just high owned yesterday. But this is what I mean. You study good players' lines. You go, why are they doing this? And that's the concept. Why did Ricky D have 0% Ian Anderson and stack the Mets? Royal Payne did the same exact thing. A lot of sharp players did. They didn't go whole hog, high variance, and have a ton of lineups like that, like Ricky D and Royal Payne did. But they had a larger proportion of those types of lineups compared to the field. Will it work out this way all the time? Where there's the cheap this, and I could play that? Not necessarily. Sometimes the ownership is spread out, and it's like, you could. The value of that stack, the extra value you get from the stack, goes down and down as the pitcher ownership goes down and down. And then you also have to figure out opportunity cost. That's why I said, like, stacking the Braves against the Grum or the Pirates against Burns, even if you added an extra 4 points, 5 points to the stacks projection, they still would end up being the worst stacks of the day, right? I think the bat yesterday had the Pirates at like a ceiling stack total of like 76. It's like the Mets were like 83. Like just before you even do any type of calculation of leverage, like the Pirates couldn't make up enough points. It doesn't matter that Burns was 50% owned. They just don't get there often enough that the leverage would be worth it, because the opportunity cost means you're not rostering other teams that are projected better and are still under owned. But that's the concept. When people think, oh, well, what, do I just press a button on an optimizer and just like whatever it tells me? No. You strategize. That's the first thing that you do. Going through the YouTube chat. Brett Booth, if we could talk about how to review Roto Tracker results and determine if you were playing well positive VV. Like you have said, you need to be top 1%, above 1%. Yeah, that is, to me, that's for if you're a GPP player, that's the thing that I look at. Now, I haven't updated my Roto Tracker in probably 2 weeks or so, something like that. Yeah, 2 weeks, 3 weeks even. So I go to the graph. You go to Roto Tracker, you go to this finishing position. It'll give you a breakdown of like the percentiles that your lineups finish. Now, this, you have to organize this because it's not just, it's going to take all contest sizes 100 plus. So like that'll include double ups and stuff. So let's say you want to do MLB. Let's just lifetime in MLB for me. A large sample size, MLB. 1% buckets. Right, I can see here. Right, not bad. Right, 1.6%. Let's go to, where's GPP? Right, so this is mine from lifetime MLB. It's not great. It's not really that great. I mean, it's profitable. It's over, like really you're looking for over 1.2%. But I mean, I'd love this to be higher, finishing with decision. So you want more than your fair share. Now, since the rake is like 15% in these contests and GPPs, that's why like you would want more than 15% higher than your fair share of top 1% finishes. So like 1.15% would be like kind of breaking even. So this would be MLB. Now, if I go just to this year, I go by season. Season MLB 2021. But this is going to be a much smaller sample size. See, this season, 1.6%. Right? I got up over here. That includes a second place finish and a bunch of like top 20s. So if you haven't, if this number starts getting up and up, 1.6, 1.8, 2 point, whatever, and you haven't won first place, then you're playing well and it's variance. There you go. Right? So that's what you should be judging it by. If you see in this finish position graph that you can see all these percentiles down here. Obviously, the cash line is around here, right? 22%. So if you see a lot of more of a bump here and lower here, like if it looks more like a curve, like a bell curve. So you're coming down here and it's like only 1% here, but up over here, you're finishing lineups in these percentiles at a much higher rate. That means you're just playing your lineups are too safe. Your min K, you're prioritizing projection more so than ownership. Right? A perfect looking graph for a GPP player would be concave. Would be high here and high there. The problem is about getting the high on this end that there's also so many bad lineups. There's in large field GPPs, there's so many bad lineups that it's very hard even for your worst lineups to finish in last place. Right? You'd see that bell curve more in sharper contests. If you were to play the small field stuff, like a good graph would look like a bell curve, like a reverse bell curve, because there's less bad lineups, so your likelihood of coming in like last place or the last percentile is much higher. In the large field contest that I primarily play, which is what this shows primarily, like some of those bottom lineups have guys that don't even the pitchers that aren't even in. I mean, it's just like it's hard to come into that low in a contest. But if we take a look at GPPs, like my overall, like not just MLB, like my GPPs overall, this lifetime, like this is what I want to see, right? Finishing position 1.8%, right, in the top 1%, 1.6% in the top second percentile. Like this is what it should look like. The more that it looks like this, the better you're playing in general. You want this as high as possible. Obviously, the more that you can place in the top 1%, the more likely you're going to win. You're going to win first. You're going to win big. But this is what, if your graph looks like more like this than flat across the board, or just kind of like a little up here, a little down, like, a little bit more even, right? If it's flat, if your graph looks more flat, that means you're not playing, you're not leveraged, and you're playing too many similar lineups. And if you're getting the hump here in the min cash position in this 20th range, that means you're highly prioritizing projection way too much, and not worrying about ownership enough. And obviously, if it's the reverse, then you're just really bad. If this graph looks the opposite way, then I don't know, maybe quit DFS at that point. I mean, obviously in a small sample size, you can get better. But obviously, if it looks the other way, you're doing bad, right? But it's possible. It's possible for this to look the other way, to have the top 1% be at like 0.4%, but one of those finishes being the milli maker, right? You just happen to win the milli maker, even though you've been playing for 4 years and just draining all your money. That is absolutely possible. In fact, it does happen. Okay. Just because someone wins the milli maker doesn't mean they're a long-term profitable player. So yes, I'm assuming there probably are people that have won the milli maker that their graph looks the opposite way. That's getting lucky and not playing well, right? That's the whole thing that we're trying to do here with this analysis. Am I playing bad? Am I playing well or running bad? Am I playing bad or running well? Right? One of the two. So that's what this does. So if you get Roto Tracker, you can probably do it. There's some way in Excel to probably come up with this type of thing. Maybe not look as pretty of a graph. You could probably do it in Excel with your results, with your entries file. I assume there is. Someone probably does it. I don't, because I'll just pay for Roto Tracker. So let's take a look. What does the red line across the graph mean? This is the break-even point, right? So if you were to place 1% of lineups in the top 1%, it would hit that line, right? So you see here, look, 1%, like the 52% of 1% of my lineups hit the 52nd percentile. 1% of my lineups hit the 49th percentile, right? 1% hit here, but like 1.2% of my lineups hit the 19th, right? So more than average, while these have lower, right? So it's under 1% of these 1 percentiles. That's what that red line means. Oh, let's see. Dave Spag, I usually make 162 lineups. That seems kind of random. That seems kind of random. 4x4, 4x3, 4x2, 3x3, and 3x2 with 50% primary max, and you're mentioning all the stuff that doesn't matter. Should I lower it? none of the stuff Dave, none of the stuff you mentioned matters. Lineups matter. Make plus EV lineups. Well, I'm making what 4x4 lineups? What 4x3 lineups? Are you're just making them just because why are you making 3x3 lineups? Why are you making 3x2 lineups? Why? Are they good ones? Did you find some good ones? Are there more good 4x2 lineups? I mean, like what? Why are you doing 20% each? Why aren't you doing the lineups that are better? What happens if there's tons of 4-4 lineups that are good? Why are you only doing 20% of them? If they're better than all the 3-3 lineups, build more of those. You're trying to come up with magic settings. Magic settings don't exist. The settings on an optimizer don't matter. Do not matter. You pick up a calculator. Okay, I'm going to give you a calculator. I want you to do my taxes for me. Just do my taxes on a calculator. What buttons do you press? I have a friend who also needs their taxes done. Is he going to press the same buttons? There has to be buttons on a calculator that magically do my taxes. That's what you're asking when you ask optimizer questions. Right? Because that sounds dumb, because your reaction would be, well, I mean, how much money did you make? Well, I mean, how many dependents do you have? I mean, like, what taxes are you doing? Right? The calculator's there just to calculate whatever you want to calculate. Right? Just like the optimizer's there to build the lineups you want to build. What lineups do you want to build? It's like, well, no, I want to build, here's some settings. I'm just going to bang on the keyboard and just spit out numbers. Are those are the numbers that you want? I don't know. Well, so you can't treat the calculator like that. So on a slate-to-slate basis, I'm never going in and going, okay, here's my defaults, press the button, and 2 minutes later, I got all my lineups. That doesn't happen. If you do that, that's why you're losing. I want people to do that. Tons of people do. Download the CSV. I could download the CSV and get projections from any source that I want, and I could highlight exact lineups that were built literally by pressing a button in a stack number. Right? 5-man, right? You say you put in 5-3, you put in and you build 150 lineups like that. With no other differences, nothing. I mean, I could go. They take that 150 set and find those lineups. I could find nearly all of those lineups. Because someone goes into an optimizer with a projection setting, says, just give me a bunch of lineups. Right? No strategy, no nothing. Just give me a bunch of lineups. Sometimes you see the same user with the 20 of, they have 100% of 4 guys, and which is fine if you want to, but I could tell that they just pressed the button. And you know what? That none of them are winning. No one's winning. Or they're min cashing or something. They're high median lineups. Okay, great. Played the highest median 5-3 lineups. Way to go. Does that mean anything? They're also the highest owned. So what did that do for you? Didn't do much. Michael Dompier asks, someone was heckling Andre and Chief on Grinders Live last night about their play. I don't know. I wasn't listening. I think I caught the end of that show. But I don't know. I don't know what happened. I don't know. I don't watch everything on RotoGrinders. I'm not tuned into everything that's going on. I have no idea what was happening. Let's see. Scrolling through. Matt Andrzejewski, if I pronounced that right. Blender, with what you were saying, assuming Smiley is going to be highly owned tonight as an SP2, would the Marlins be a good leverage stack on DK, even on a 14-game slate? Well, it depends on the ownership. Let's see. I really haven't looked at today's slate. Do we have, initial ownership? Is he going to be? He's not going to be. Based on our projected ownership, 67. Oh, maybe he is going to be owned. 32%. Yeah, that's viable. Erod against the Oakland. I mean, it really depends on the ownership. So yeah, Sonny Gray is how much is pitch count going to be? Sonny Gray going to be owned today at 7,500? I think he only pitched 3 innings his rehab start. I don't know. It depends on, like I said, it depends on the ownership. But yeah, if we look, okay, this is DraftKings. Obviously, we're talking about DraftKings, so Smiley is not going to be owned much on FanDuel on a one-pitcher site. It's that you need 2 pitchers, right? Probably Lance Lynn and Smiley. I could see that combination, right, against the Marlins. So let's look at the DraftKings. Let's just look. Where do the Marlins show up, like, as far as... Not, where are they? They not exist here anymore? Oh, no, they're actually high. They're actually, wow. The Marlins project as the 3rd highest ceiling stacked to the slate as of right now. After the card, basically, they're the highest projected team outside of Coors. If we let's take a look at DraftKings, and let's take a look. So this ownership may actually change. Where's Miami? Right, and look how low owned they are. 7, 4, 2, 1, 1. No, this would be a prime spot. Even if Drew Smiley wasn't owned, according to the bat, the Marlins are a great team, and they're the best point per dollar team on the slate. I don't care. It's a 14-game slate. I mean, look, I'm looking at it, right? It's not. I'm not making. This is not conjecture. I'm showing you the bat stack page. So according to the bat, as of that's starting lineups right now. So the fact that if Drew Smiley is going to be 32% owned on top of it, the Marlins may. I mean, you got the best of both worlds. I mean, Smiley projects what? I mean, this is a classic high variance situation where the pitcher projects well and the team projects well, right? But they can't both happen at the same time. I mean, technically they can, right? Drew Smiley can come out, have a good game, play 5 innings, and then the Marlins get 10 runs off the bullpen. Yeah, obviously it could happen. But no, I was expecting, that's why I said I was expecting on the stack pair. It's like, oh, the Marlins will probably be down here somewhere. Like, no. It's St. Louis, Colorado, then Miami. So no, if Smiley's 32% owned, and Miami projects like this, I'd be playing Miami. But who knows? That could change later in the day. Maybe Smiley's ownership comes down and Miami's ownership comes up. But yes, that would be the concept. But here, I mean, I thought my Marlins were going to be down in like the 84 range and be like, okay, well, they're down here, but they get a boost because a third of the field is going to own the pitcher. So you have to treat them kind of like more in this range, in this area. But no, the Marlins are up there already. I mean, the Marlins, if Smiley is going to be 32% owned, the Marlins are probably a better stack than they're probably better stacked than the Cardinals, truthfully. Even the Cardinals project like better than anything else, but they're good. I mean, they didn't raise their prices again, DK. They're facing Chichi Gonzalez. That's the mega chalk on DraftKings. So in comparison to ownership, I'd much rather play them. I mean, I'd much rather play the Marlins straight up, even if Smiley wasn't owned. I don't know. Maybe people don't see that. Because if people see that, maybe the Marlins do end up being owned at the double digits. I don't know. We'll see later in the day. Michael Dompier, casual Friday question. For large field first place, heavy, small entry GPPs. Oh, so, okay. For large field for small entry, so like large field 3 maxes, is there such a thing? Typically, I don't consider large field to be anything that's single entry, but whatever. If I review my lineups after and some were duped or worse, how could it be worse than duped? I don't know how it could be worse or duped. Should I question my process that landed on the lineup? It depends. It really depends. Well, that's what I'm saying. I don't know what type of what type of contest are you playing that your baseball lineups are getting duped? Are they getting duped by good players? I mean, that's the first thing I would say. Are they getting duped by good players at least? It depends. I mean, it really depends. That'll only happen on small slates. If that's happening on large slates, I don't know what you're doing. It's very hard to get duplicate lineups in large field contests. Let's see. So I don't know. Let's see. Do. Doug Montgomery asks, taking away not playing because of schedule, do you ever decide not to play and why? Not really. On the small, I'm not a big fan of the small slates. It makes my head hurt. I'm talking about like 2-game slates. Like I rarely play the night slates, 2 or 3 game baseball slates, because it becomes duplication becomes a factor. Now I don't mind. Like obviously, I'm playing MMA like that. I play NFL Showdown like that. There's big money involved, and people play these dupe lineups all the time. Yeah, but it's a whole different process. When you're playing a 2-game MLB slate, it's more about things don't even make sense. You're building lineups that like just logically don't even make sense just for the sake of having a unique lineup. So it's a completely different thought process. So a lot of times I'm just not in that mood, right? Like on Mondays and Thursdays NFL season, right? Sunday nights, I'm in that mood, right? We have these big NFL Showdown contests. MMA on Saturday, I'm in that mood, right? But when I'm playing a 14-game MLB slate, I don't feel like, oh, well, the 933 game slate, let me get in that let me prune dupes and stuff, and let me run stuff to see who's going to own what. And I just don't feel like it. And the variance is so high for those types of things anyway. Why? I'll just go to sleep early, right? I'll go on the couch. But other than that, no. I mean, the only times that I take off is when I just like I don't feel like playing, have something on the schedule. You know, me and my wife are going out or something. I mean, like that type of thing. But for the most part, I play every day. If it's big, I mean, why not? What else am I doing? I'm not doing anything. What else am I doing? If I'm sick, right? Like I didn't play MMA last weekend because I got sick to my stomach. I was sick over the weekend, so I didn't play. Okay, that's normal. But don't feel like you have to play every slate. You don't have to. It'll be there. DFS will be there. Right? It's okay to take the day off. Or it's okay to say, I'm not going to build 100 lineups. I'm just going to build one. I'm going to play a single entry and whatever. I'm going to pick one thing and whatever. Yeah, sure, you can do that. Why not? DFS degenerate. How do you determine what stack type to use on any given day? Haven't I explained this like 14 times this week already? The more you keep on asking that question, the more you still have not gotten it yet. It's about lineups and not players. How do you determine which stack type? I don't determine which stack type to use. I pick lineups. Now, the larger the slate, the more likely that five-man stacks on DraftKings are going to be. That's going to be the bulk of the plus EV lineups. So if you by default played 5-man stacks, okay, you probably can't go wrong just playing other. But there are 4-man, there are 4 3s and 4 2s and 3 3s that are plus EV that you could play. If you find them, play them. There you go. So like, there's no what stack type to use. People are looking the same thing before with the optimizer settings. You have to think in terms of lineups. You have to think in terms of lineups. I'm going to repeat that a million times. I could show you a lineup that of every different stack type that is plus EV. I could show you a 3-2. I could show you a 4-1. I could show you. There aren't many of those other ones, those 3-2 lineups. There aren't as many plus EV ones of those, but there are probably some that are better than 5 3s. Now, there are more 5-3s that are better than 3-2s. But it doesn't mean you can't play. It doesn't mean it depends on the lineup. It absolutely depends on the lineup. You could there are plenty of 5-3s that are horrible, that are awful. On today's slate, let's say I'm going to play okay, let's do this. Let's make awful lineups. Can we make awful lineups today? Let's go on DraftKings and make awful lineups. Who's the worst projected teams? Let's see. Who projects the worst ceiling wise? Oakland and Cleveland. Okay. So let's do Oakland, Cleveland. Okay, let's do that. This is what we're going to do. We're going to make bad lineups. Okay. Oakland, Cleveland. Where are the pitchers? Okay, who are the worst pitchers on the slate? Who are the worst pitchers? We're going to play. Okay, maybe we want to still spend all of our money. So let's say I'm going to play Adrian Hauser. I'm going to lock in Casey Mize at 9,000. Okay, that seems like a bad idea. Okay, I'm going to lock him in, and Adrian Hauser against. I mean, actually, he's not a very good pitcher. Taijuan Walker against the Yankees. Okay, there you do something like that. And who are the worst? Who are the worst teams? The A's, right? Are we playing the A's? Who are the lowest projected? Who's the lowest projected even point per dollar wise? Maybe the Red Sox. Maybe are we going to do the Red Sox? Red Sox, A's. Oh, we'll do the A's, Indians. Indians actually project well point per dollar. So let's do the A's and the Red Sox. Okay, so we're going to do the A's and the Red Sox. Okay, we're going to go into stacks. I'm going to build 5-3 A's Red Sox. Where's the A? Where's the? Oh, just with game stacking. Okay, with game stacking this. 100%, 100%. Okay, and we're going to build whatever. Build rules doesn't matter. Who cares? Build 20 lineups just for whatever purpose. Okay, build. We're going to build. Okay. 5-3. We're building 5-3s, right? Why didn't go? Well, okay, I didn't do it this time. Hold on. Forgot to put that in. Let's go. We're building 5-3s. It got to work, right? 5-3s. Delete the other builds. Okay. Now, before we look at that, I'm going to go back to the stacks page. I'm going to uncheck these two. I'm going to go to the stacks page. I'm going to still build 5-3. I'm not going to build 5-3. I'm going to build any of these teams. I'm going to build 4-2 and 3-3, which are suspect. There aren't going to be as many. So just 50% of these and 50% of those. And don't even have to limit the ownership. So build these. Okay. So these are 4-2s and 3-3s. Just 20 of them of whatever teams. Okay. Okay. We're going to take a look at your 5-3 lineups. Okay. You're playing Taijuan Walker. You're playing Casey Mize, and you're playing a 5-3 of the A's Red Sox game. They're awful projected. These are the two of the worst projected pitchers for their salary and two of the worst projected teams for their salary in a stack. But you're playing 5-3. So here you go. You have 24% total ownership and an 79 projection. So look at these projections, 78, 79. Here, and these are 4-2s and 3-3s. 120. These lineups project 40 points higher than these 5-3 lineups. Okay? But they're not 5-3s, but they're 4-2s. I thought you said you can't play 4-2. Yeah, but these lineups are way better than these guys. Who's going to play? I would never play these lineups. 40 points projected lower? Yeah, sure. They're all 1% though. Yeah, I guess. Yeah, right. You get the ownership with it, right? Do you get enough of it? How big are the contest? It would have to be 1 million. I mean, there'd have to be 500,000 entries in this contest to play a lineup like this. I'm probably more. Look how low projected this is. When I could build plenty of lineups. Okay, so here we go. 120. 128 ownership. This is based on our current ownership. Okay. So let's say here's a 111 at 119. This is low owned enough. Look at this. You got a 4-man Cardinals who are going to be chalky, right? You got 2-man Rockies and 2-man Jazz Chisholm and Duval against, and there you go. And again, Scherzer and Rodriguez. So it's not even like the highest owned pitchers. Like this lineup 8 right here at 111%, 11 total ownership and 119 is better than any of those 5, is light years better than any of those 5 threes that we just made with the Taijuan Walker and Casey Mize and the A's Red Sox game. And this is a 4-2-2 lineup. Okay? So you can build plenty of bad 5 threes, and you could build plenty of good 3-3-2s and 2 as a whole, but I wouldn't want a 3-3-2 lineup that projected 20 points. I mean, you're losing some of the correlation. The correlation boosts your ceiling, increases the variance of your line, which is not reflected in this median number. So if I had a choice, let's say this lineup that we're looking at, right? This 4-2-2 lineup, 119.3 at 111 ownership. If I could find a 5-3 lineup that projects for 119 and 111, I'd rather play that. Like that would be a better lineup than this lineup. But if I can't, then it's not, right? This lineup could be as good as a lot of other 5-3 lineups, right? We scroll down some more. What else do we have? 110, 118 at 110. Here's a what? 3-man, 3 Cardinals, 3 Marlins, a Rocky, and an Astro. So it's a 3-3-1-1. This lineup would be better than any of those Boston at those 5 threes. Any of them would be better than all of them, easily. This is 39 points better projection. That's 40 points. I mean, you can't give up that much for the sake of a roster. How much boost are you going to get from the correlation of a 5-3 lineup? That you're going to be able to make up 40 points? You're not. Correlation doesn't boost it that much, right? Oh, yeah, well, it's 25 ownership. Some, yeah, sure. But I mean, do you need to be that low? No, you don't. To win the backflip on DraftKings. You don't. So you're too low on ownership as well. So this lineup, like if we save this lineup, here's a 3-3-2. Let's save that. Now let's just run the 5 threes, right? Let's run the 5 threes. Just run. But we looked here in my lineups. We saved this one lineup. We want at least this low ownership, right? So 110. So we want to find 5 threes that are 1-8 around here that are at least 110 or lower. So let's put that in. Let's put 110 in. Let's build 20 lineups, just 5-3, whatever. I don't care about the diversification. Are we getting this? So let's look for 5-3 lineups that would be viable. Do I have everything set? This is taking a little longer than I thought. For 20 lineups. Just stop it. Okay. So here we go. Here we go. See, 119, 104. This is a 5-man Cardinals, 3-man Marlins, assuming the Marlins are going to be this low owned. Right? Here's another one. It was JT Brubaker in the lineup. Right? Logan Gilbert. Here's 192. 114 and 92. So you're getting a little less ownership. Well, let's go back to this lineup. Okay, so here's a 5-3. Let me go to the save lineups. Like here, compare these two lineups. Right? Here's a 5-3, higher projection and lower ownership than this. So I mean, this lineup is probably better than this lineup, but not by not that much. This is a 5-3. So this is a 5-3. This is a 3-3-2, 3-3-1-1. but they're not that far off from each other. This one is just a little bit more owned and has a little bit less correlation, but they're closely projected. So while I would say that lineup 1 is better than lineup 11 in a large field contest, lineup 11 isn't bad. Because we take a look, let's say we get rid of this one, and we go back to our build that we had. Like, let's look at a 5-3. Let's see, a 5-3. Like maybe we look at this, right? So let's compare those two. So here's that 3-3-1-1 lineup. And here's a 5-3. It's a 5-man Marlins, 3-man Angels. It's a little bit lower owned, but more correlated. But look how many points you're giving up in comparison. The difference is 11 median points. Is the correlation worth 11 points? No. The ownership is not that much different, right? Just 10 a little lower here. This second one that we pulled, that is a 5-3, is a little less owned and a little bit more correlated, but also 11 points different in projection. So does the 10 percentage points in ownership and the slightly more correlation make up for those 11 points? Probably not. It makes up some of it. Yeah, sure. But not all of it. So between these two lineups, the first one, which is a 3-3-1-1, based on these numbers, assuming these numbers are accurate, right? This would be a better lineup than that lineup. Lineups, not players, right? But lineups, not optimizer settings, not like this lineup is worse, but it's a 5-3 and it's a Marlin stack, and it's Scherzer and Rodriguez. Doesn't, based on these numbers, this lineup would probably show a higher expected value based on assuming these numbers are right. Right? Once we say the Marlins are going to be 4 times as owned, now it's changed. Obviously, we have to assume that Duvall's going to be 1% owned and Garrett Cooper's going to be 1% owned, right? Just based on these numbers. These ownerships change later in the day. Maybe it ends up that this lineup is way better than that line. Who knows? I mean, who knows? But as of now, what I'm looking at on the screen. So when you ask a question such as, well, what stack size should I play? Like what food should I eat today? I mean, what do you want to play? I mean, what do you want to do? I mean, there are lineups that of every different type that could be better than one another. Now, are there more 5-3 lineups that are better? Yeah, probably. Are there more 5-man stack type of lineups, 4-3-1s, than there are 3-3-2 and bunch of one-offs type of stuff with no correlation? Yes. But it doesn't mean that you can't play 3-3-2. That's supposedly not the best. You play 5-man stacks. No, who says you can't? Now, do you want to go through the hassle of seeing what lineup constructions are better? I mean, you could simulate some stuff and see. But sometimes it's easier. On large slates, there are going to be way more. On DraftKings, there are going to be way more plus EV lineups that are 5-man stacks. On large slates, especially. So to save you time, instead of going through everything, we just say, I'm just not even going to bother with trying to even find 4-man stacks. I'm just going to do 5X and I'm done. I could do it quicker. Right? Maybe I do miss some lineups that are better than some of my lineups, but if I'm building 150 and I want to do it as efficiently as possible, if I want to do it in a half an hour or less, do I bother trying to find 3-3-2 lineup? No, just most likely, if I play all 5-man stacks, I'm not going to do anything egregiously wrong. I may not find some gems in the rough. Maybe 10 or 20 of my lineups on the bottom may not be as good as some 4-3s that I could have found. Yeah, but it'll take you time in order to do that. Like I'm showing you right here, it'll take you time to do that type of stuff. So if you just defaulted to okay, on large slates, just play 5-man stacks. 5X, 5-2, 5, whatever. Then don't have to worry about it. You're fine. That would be the answer to the question. It's not, that isn't optimal. That's just the most efficient. If you can make a ton of lineups. But if you're hand building, you're building 10 lineups, take the time, go through. You don't have to play 5-man stacks. Is there a 4-3-1 that's better that you could build that's better? If you're just hand building one lineup and you're in the app and you're like, are you trying to put together a 5 and a 3? And it's like, I want to stack these two teams. And you're like 5, 2, and then anything you run around, you can't get that third guy in because you either have too much or too little. But you're like, well, 3,400, I could play Dom Smith or something like that as a one-off. But that's not a 5-3 lineup. Yeah, but that may be a better lineup. So play a 5-2-1. If you can't, don't force piece. I'm going to play a worse pitcher just so I could force a third piece in. Like, no, it's probably better that you just, then now that lineup would be better as a 5-2-1. So because you're thinking too rigidly. You don't win because of the lineup construction. It depends. I saw before. You're going to play that Casey, that Boston, Oakland stack with those two pitchers. The construction's great. I played a 5-3, but it's a horrible lineup. You care about the lineups, not the constructions. Because you could have horrible lineups and great constructions and great quote unquote constructions. And you could have great lineups and what's supposedly are bad constructions. So you have to think of the lineup as a whole. Let's see. Anything else before we get out of here? Well, Michael Dombey has clarification on his question. Last night I had 100 entries in the mini max, and I noticed a few of your 5-3 stacks were duped. There are 24,000 lineups, so maybe that especially 5-3. You're condensing your construction so much that, especially if you're spending most, if not all, of your salary. Yeah, obviously, especially if they're two chalky teams. How many other ways are they to spend 50,000 and have two teams together that are in 5-3? There's only so many combinations of that. We got a Hubro in the chat. Congrats to Hubro. He got another 100,000 last night in the 777. I always have to say it's not the largest field, right? You see the score and you go, oh yeah. If I played that contest, I wouldn't need to score that high. Jim Steele asked, how do I arrive at the 110% ownership? Because I was looking at the lineups that I was building before, right? We built 5-3. We were building 5 of these lineups here. So I was looking for a lineup that was low enough owned in the same range. And once I found this 111, right, I'm like, okay, this is very similar in projection to all these other lineups that are a little bit more owned. So this was like the lowest ownership sum that I found in this range. Right. So since this was the lowest in this, so obviously it's the best. Why wouldn't I play a projection that's like this is 111 sum and these are higher and they're lower projected. So this was like the lowest that I found, that 111. So my goal was to find ones in that range that of different constructions. Right. This was a 4-2-2 at 111. So now I want to find 5-3s at around 111. Right? And see what the projection difference is. Same ownership. Are there going to be some 5-3 lineups that are about the same projected? Because they would end up being better because they would be more correlated. Right? Look, this is 141 and projects the same. For actually 0.1 lower. So obviously this lineup is better than that lineup. Right? This lineup projects slightly better, but it also, this one's 30 percentage points more owned based on our ownership projections as of right now, which doesn't mean anything right now. Mart's mimic. I never set ownership limits. Maybe you could get some good lineups at 110, but I think mainly you just get bad stacks. No, you look, you can see the projection. That's the point. That's the point. You're not doing that so you could get low ownership. That's what I said for the first, right? Oh, look, 24, but the projection's horrible. The whole goal of GPPs is to get the same projected lineups that are going to be lower owned. Combination. I mean, that's the dream. That's the whole point. You're gonna play a guy, you're gonna play a lineup that projects for X amount of points. And I'm gonna play a lineup that projects for the same amount of points that half the field is not even playing. Like, why wouldn't you do that? Like that's what you're trying to do. That's the whole point. Have the same chance to win first. They have the same chance of getting the same amount of points, but half the people don't have them. So you have more chance of winning first place by yourself. That's the whole point. That's the whole point of DFS. Like, so if you don't get that concept, then I'm sorry, you're not going to do very well in GPPs. But I just wanted to highlight, because when people, what stacks, you can make great. Look, you can make here's a 5-3. That's horrible. So it's not about just like, oh, I'm going to make 5 3s, and I'm going to select 800 stacks and just. Why am I not printing? Why am I not printing? Why am I losing all my money? Yeah, because you're making bad lineups. You're probably making some good lineups. There's probably good lineups mixed in there, right? You're making 150 like that or something. You probably get a good amount of good lineups. But who knows? Maybe half your lineups suck. You look and they clump up. Sometimes you're trying to get good lineups, and sometimes your last 10 are bad. Sometimes I run out of time and my last 10 clump up, and I'm just like, screw it. I got a minute left. I can't fix the clumps. So I guess I'm playing a clump. I'm playing some bad clump. I'm playing 10% of my lineups are clumps. And just like whatever. That's the cost of doing business, I guess. Brett Booth asks, is there any more likely mindset for it's a 1,000-person contest versus a 5,000 versus a 20,000? Yeah, that just determines how much projection you're willing to give up for leverage. That's it. That's why I said when we looked at that line, like looked at this lineup, right? Remember this bad lineup, this 5-3? Look how it's really low owned, but it's really low projected. In order to play a lineup that has this much leverage, like you need like 5 million entries in the contest. Like so this lineup would be perfectly. You could probably squeak out. I mean, you'd have to have such a large sample size, a plus ROI in a contest that has 5 million entries, maybe, right, or something like that. That's all it is. That's all that means, right? So, like, if we go back to the 2 lineups that we were looking at before, like this 110, these 2 lineups over here, like you're giving up 11 points in order to be more correlated and slightly less owned. It's like this lineup is fine for I mean, this lineup is fine all around, but let's say we go to, where's build 3? These 5 3s. Like, you don't have to give up as much projection. So let's say, like, here's 102.66 at 73. Like, this would be, I mean, you're giving up 18 points and you're gaining this much. I mean, this would be a large field. This would be a 20,000 plus large field type of lineup. Playing 2 Singer, Brubaker, doing a Brave stat, like this type of lineup with this ownership, and even large, this would be a contrarian even for large field. 73% ownership, 102 projection. Right, here's a 95 lineup. 107, right? 107, where's that 107 lineup? Right? Colorado stack with Keegan Aiken as your SP2. Like, this would be a large field lineup at best. Right? You're giving up 13 points of projection from the optimal. and you're gaining 95%. But in like small field stuff, like most of these lineups, even this first lineup, this would be, I mean, this you could probably still play this in large field because you're playing Bader there. He's lower owned as part of the stack. But the smaller the field, the less of the projection you need to give up. That's the only difference. That's the only consideration difference. 500-man contest, you're probably not playing lineups that are 20 points off the optimal. There are plenty of lineups that are low owned enough that are 5 to 10 points off. That would be way better. You don't need the nuts. You don't need 1 million points in the smaller field contests. You don't need to sacrifice that much projection in order to get first place equity. In large field contests, you do. But you don't need to sacrifice so much where you're playing lineups that are awful projected, even if their construction looks good. And everything is comparative to the slate. Don't give up 40 points. That's all relative. You have to think comparatively. I hope you understand what that means. So there's no numbers. Remember what I said. If I can answer it with an exact number, that means it's a stupid question. How many points should I give? Depends on the slate. How many lineups are there in between those two numbers? That's what matters. How many lineups are there between 120 and 79.98 in projection? How many are there? Now, I don't know exactly, but I know that probably tens upon thousands, hundreds of thousands, maybe. That's what you care about. We have some basketball slates where there's two guys that are absurdly projected, right? You have the injuries. So some guy's out and he's only 4,000 and he projects for 10x. And it's well, he's going to be 80% owned, right? This guy's going to be 80% owned and he has a 10x median. So if you fade him, you're obviously going to drop your ownership, but you're also dropping your projection by a ton. But that's the only way to drop your projection by a ton. That's the only way that happens. So the gap between the lineups of certain projections there's not going to be stuff in the middle. Because that's the only way you could get the projection drop is by not playing that guy. So if you build lineups without that guy, you may be 15 points off and that may be fine because the lineup that is 15 points off the top optimal whatever may still only be the 1200th best lineup possible anyway. I mean, it may be. Yet on another slate, in basketball, if there's no situation like that, 15 points off the top optimal may be there may be 140,000 lineups in between them, right? Because to give up 15 points in projection for the sake of ownership where most of the players are efficiently priced, I mean, 15 points is a lot. But it's not a lot when there's one or two guys that are really high owned. That's the only way you could get a drop like that. It also means that there are less lineups in between them. So that's why coming up with a number, it's comparative to the slate. Some slates, the difference between the top optimal, especially on larger slates, if the top one is 120 to 115 could be, I don't know, 700,000 lineups. So if there are 700,000 lineups within 5 points of the optimal, do you think you should be playing lineups that are really below? You could probably find 150 lineups that are lower owned in that range, right? Some slates this range only has 2,000 lineups, and a lot of them are the chalk of the chalk, and you almost can't even get leverage. So you're okay, well, I have to look at a lower range. On that specific slate. And what's that exact number? Who knows what the actual numbers are? Right? They're not going to. We have some slates where the chalkiest lineup is ownership sum is 240. Sometimes the chalkiest lineup ownership sum is 100. Right? So there's no exact, there's no number to give you. It's all comparative to what you're looking at. On smaller slates, it could be even a bigger drop. You go, oh, I'm playing a 3-game MLB slate. Should I be giving up 15 points in projections? Like, how are you not giving up? How are you doing it that you're not? There's not as many combinations of lineups. So if you're going to play a large field GPP, it's like, well, I only want to give up 3 points. Well, then you're playing all the chalk line. I mean, there's only so many players in the pool. So in order to get different, you're going to have, in order to gain the leverage, you're going to have to give up a lot more projection on that type of slate, because it's only a 3-game slate. But if they ask me, should you ever give up 15 points? Like, how do I answer that question? I can't. It's a yes or no question, which means it's stupid. Yes, there are lineups on certain slates that you can. And there's the lineups on certain slates that would be awful to do so. It's all comparative to other lineups in the contest. That's all you're doing, is competing against other people. So your job is to build better lineups than other people. Plus EV. Have higher expected value. That means the sharper the contest you play, the sharper the lineups tend to be. So a lineup that's like, we have this saved lineup, you go, okay, this lineup's pretty good. Right? We go, oh, this lineup's good for large field GPP. Yeah, it's probably good for large field GPP because there's a ton of people that build bad lineups in large field GPP. But maybe this lineup is not even the halfway point of the good lineups in a small field. If the large field GPPs had all sharp players in it, then it would end up being the same. The reason why large field GPPs are the way they are is because there are a lot of bad players in them. So your average strength of lineup that you need to be profitable is lower. Well, if you play the 777 or something, the average strength of a lineup is much higher. So a lineup that is plus EV in one contest may be negative EV in another, depending on the field strength. Imagine a universe where it's a large field. It's large field, 50,000 entries. On one side, in one universe, it's 50,000 entries, and it's all the sharpest people. All. There's no dead money in there. They all know how to play. Then you have another 50,000 entry contest with the dumbest people in the world. Dumb. Which you could take the same lineup. You're going to do way better in one contest with the same exact lineup. One contest, you're like, I'm gonna play that lineup and run it, and let's say we run this, simulate this contest 10,000 times. In the sharp contest, maybe you lose 20% of your money. And you're like, but I thought I'm building a good lineup. It's like you are building on a good lineup on average. It's just that in comparison to the other lineups in that contest, it's under the halfway point. Then you go into the dumb contest, and it's like you have 180% ROI. You go, it's the same, but it's the same lineup. Yeah, but your lineup is actually literally the best ROI lineup in the entire contest. 1 out of 50,000. So if we simulate this out, whatever, 100,000 times, your ROI on that lineup is going to be much higher than 49,999 other lineups, because all those lineups are really bad. But in the other contests with the sharp players, you may have like the 35,000th best lineup in the contest from an EV perspective. So that's why I say in the course, the number one thing that will affect your ROI in daily fantasy sports is the strength of your relative skill between you and your opponents. That's why contest selection is such a big thing. You could be an average player and make more money by just playing against finding weaker players and playing in weaker contests. You don't even have to improve your game. Obviously, the more that you improve your game, the more likely you're going to be better than the field that you're in, or at least better than more of the people in the field. So if you're building good lineups, try to play against the worst players as possible. Stay in the low stakes where a lot of the restricted high volume players can't play. Get good there, so that when you move up, you're good enough to be with the big boys. This is what I talk about in the theory of daily fantasy sports. It's a 15-hour audio DFS masterclass. All this type of stuff is in there. How to think like a professional DFS player. It's more structured. You don't have to go through all my pregame shows and ask questions or whatever. It's all structured, just like a seminar. It's like you're taking a 15-hour seminar of playing daily fantasy sports. Any sport. It's not just MLB. This applies to literally every sport. It's the same concepts. Same exact thing. Game theory is the same exact thing no matter what. Got game objectives, player selection, expected value, leverage, correlation, construction, risk management, exploits, and psychology. 15 hours with me and James McCool. This is how you play DFS. I mean, this is the math. This is the game theory and the math. You don't need a calculator in order to take the course. It's all explained in normal language. But that's what I talk. All the stuff I talk about on the show is in here. So go check that out. Theoryofdfs.com. And we got a 14-game slate today. And do we get weather? Okay. Probably maybe no weather. Maybe you don't have a weather. Maybe you don't have weather today. That would be great. So I don't have to worry about that. So we'll see what goes on. We got Grinders Live coming up later today. Click on that notification bell to know when they go live. Crunch time for premium members. So click at the link in the description. Get $10 off your first month of RotoGrinders Premium, and let's see what happens tonight, and then we'll be back. It'll be what happy Independence Day, July 4th, right? We got July 4th around, whatever coming up. I don't know. Days just run into each other. I don't know what day it is. So happy July 4th if you're American, I guess, right? I mean, it's just another day of the week for any other country, right? And hit the thumbs up button on your way out the door. Subscribe if you're new here, because this is what I do every Monday through Friday at 11 o'clock Eastern for the DFS pregame show on RotoGrinders.com.